Yo boys and girls, welcome to the Cat Eye Erika League Start Guide. She's the newest addition to Torchlight Infinite. You can get her by purchasing the Season 2 pass. She focuses on rapid movement. She builds stacks of Stalker through her hero trait, Cat's Agility, and then she uses that to deal massive multi-strike damage. It's really fun to play. I have had the opportunity to try her out, and we're going to go over in this video everything you need to know if you want to start as Cat Eye Erika. All the information on leveling this character can be found on Maxroll GG. We have leveling guides for all the heroes on that site currently. We also have endgame guides for many builds. We'll be adding more as soon as possible, so if you want to head on over to there, if you want to learn how to level this character, this video is going to focus more on what you're going to do once you've reached the Nether Realm and how you're going to build your character to have something that is formidable enough to take on, you know, your first traveler, kill all your watchers, and maybe get all your trait deck up and running. But before we get started, if you do find these videos helpful and you've used any of these league starts to start your Season 2 journey, please feel free to leave a like, maybe comment, let me know how it's gone, and yeah, subscribe if you want to get more videos like this. We'll be doing tons of end game builds throughout the league. Subscribe, ring the bell, and enjoy the rest of the video. So after completing the story, it's very likely you're going to have gear that looks very much like this. You've just got some flat lightning damage added to attacks, maybe you got a bit of attack speed, and you might even not have your resistance capped like I don't here. Maybe you found some cool legendaries along the way, but how do we get this character to one that is going to be able to tackle Traveler, Keegan, all that and beyond? Well, the best thing to do straight away is to find a new way to scale our damage, and the best way to do it early on for a reasonable budget is dexterity stacking. The way you're going to do this is craft a sword, because swords have access to the mod lightning damage per dexterity. This is going to be something you want to craft yourself. The best way to do so is grab yourself a white base, add on some dexterity with a cultivation ember, grab some attack speed and some multi-strike chance on the soul burst embers, throw on some elemental damage which gives you 4 mods so that you can then ruling ember and add the lightning damage to attacks per dexterity. After this, just enchant on any 5th or 6th mod depending on how lucky you were with the ruling ember, and you're good to go. That sword will carry you for a long time, but that is nothing all on its own. You need to grab some dexterity rolls on other pieces of gear. You can do this via your hero memories, which we'll go into later. You grab some unique items, things like False God Skin, Everlasting Cloud, or just getting some suffixes on your gear that provide a decent amount of dexterity. Track back through your trees. If you followed the leveling guide from Maxroll, you will not have the dexterity points selected. So go back, grab those. You're going to be using shock and dexterity just for a little bit while you get your gear situated. For the main skill, we are using Thunder Slash. You start the game with it, and there's a reason for that. It just synergizes perfectly with Erika. It deals more damage with multi-strikes. It scales with steep strike chance. Every steep strike chance you get, as you'll see here, is converted into multi-strike chance, which just synergizes perfectly with all of your hero traits. This is a pretty ideal skill. Now, one thing I will mention is you can swap out to Berserking Blade for mapping. It is a bit more comfortable. You're going to get that 360 clear. So Berserking Blade is going to probably be better just while you're clearing through maps, and maybe just swap to Thunder Slash when you're doing bosses. Support that with multi-strike, just give you more multi-strikes and increased damage per. Raging Slash, again, you really want that steep strike chance just to give more multi-strikes. And this additional 53% damage then works for the Thunder Slash as well. Added lightning damage, of course the build focuses around lightning damage. You could swap this out later on, even change it to Precision Strike as soon as you manage to get the Dex Stacking mod, but until then, use this for a nice source of flat lightning damage. And then finally, Lightning Penetration. You could also use Steamroll, but you don't really get much penetration on this build, just this and your Curse. So use that on your main links. As for supportive skills, you're going to use Compound Source linked with Emergency Restoration. You're also going to want to add in Berserk to give you more critical strike chance. And then finally, Spirals. And then your mobility skill, Spiral Strike, linked with Quick Mobility and Harden. Harden gives you a 25% damage reduction, and Quick Mobility obviously makes you zoom around much faster, so you're going to want to get this going as soon as possible. The best way to do it with Erika is to Spiral Strike between each of your multi-strikes. This will make sure your Stalker stacks drop as infrequently as possible. Bull's Rage, just a massive melee damage buff, very standard. Use Death Will to make sure that the life cost isn't too punishing. And then Fearless Warcry. What this does is it'll taunt all nearby enemies, and it also grants you additional damage for steep strikes, or in this case multi-strikes, for the next one you deal. So fantastic addition to the build. The thing you want to do with this is get an instant Warcry from an Infinity Belt as soon as possible. It's going to be a big quality of life change for the build. As for the passives, Thunder Imbue, Magical Source, and Swiftness, you can just about fit these on. Be careful how much you level up Magical Source and Swiftness. These are flat reservation. They reserve an exact amount of mana. So if you keep leveling them up, as you'll see, this is a level 4. It reserves 15. This level 15 reserves 40. So the more you level these, the more mana it's going to reserve. So be careful you don't overcap and make it so you're unable to attack. Curse setup, curse on hit, electrocute, seal conversion. I think you could get away without using the seal conversion, but it might make the mana, yeah, it's going to make it a bit difficult. You've only got 17 mana to spare. And then finally, fearless. You can also use electric conversion. I use fearless to start with, since it's going to be much more difficult to get fervor rating and therefore crit, because it's been removed from the ranger tree. Now, as I mentioned, you are a Dex Stacker. What that means is you're going to want to come straight into Goddess of Hunting. We're focusing on lightning damage, so it's the perfect tree. You get a ton of shock chance, you get to convert some of your physical damage, you get to settle more shocks. Later on, you're going to want to come back here and select these dexterity points, dexterity and damage, and then here you've got percent dexterity and damage. Some good points once you convert. And then for the major talents, 2 good selections. The more dexterity you get, of course, the better perception becomes. Early on, you're going to want to take paralyzed. Go for perception as soon as you get probably around 1,000-ish dexterity. The second major talent, I mean, it's an obvious choice. Rushed is just perfect synergy with Erika. You get plus 20% move speed, which gives her more damage based on her hero traits, and then of course 35% additional damage if you've moved recently. That's the entire focus of the build. Then you're going to come into Blade Runner. Of course, there are some dexterity points in here, as I mentioned earlier in the video. You get some flat 45 dexterity, and then you get a big 1% lightning damage per 50 dex. That's going to be huge the more and more dexterity you get. The major talents, we have Conductive, which gains 5% of lightning damage, hit as base shock damage. That's really good. You don't get a lot of base shock damage the way that you craft your gear, so this is nice to have. Later, you are going to move away from the shock. The way that Stalker works, once you get to level 80, you can stand still and you will not lose the stack. So you move, stand still, move. So you will gain up to this 40% attack speed using static. This is a very good selection. And then finally, quick advancement. The entire build focuses on multi-strikes. It's a very easy pickup. Multi-strike still 55% increasing damage. And then for the last tree selection, I've been tossing up between Ranger and the Brave. Ranger, of course, is still very good. You get gravity, you get impending. However, the Brave offers some really nice choices towards the later ends of the tree. You get a lot of flat physical damage. Get your multi-strikes, deal increased damage while dual wielding, and some various other nice effects like Warcry effect. You've got Warcry cooldown recovery speed. For the first talent in this tree, you're going to go with Joined Force. But Joined Force just makes it so you only have to focus on having one high DPS main hand. This refers to the DPS that's actually written on the weapon. So your offhand can be more of a stat stick. This can include things like penetration rather than flat gear damage. So this makes gearing a lot easier. Then for the final talent, Well Matched just gives you 120% multi-strike chance when an elite enemy is nearby. This is a huge amount of damage. You could also take Formless while you're mapping. Of course, his multi-strike chance isn't going to matter as much because you're not going to be surrounded by elites as you would be if you were against a boss. So Formless would be really good in maps. You get that increased damage from your Fearless Warcry. But again, I would only take this if you had the immediate Warcry from an Infinity. So that's the talents. If you want the exact talent trees, go to the max roll page. They will all be listed on there in the guide available. Now I'll move on to the hero traits. And for the purpose of this, we're going to go over 2 things first. The first of which is something called Cat's Agility. Gives you plus 20% move speed. And 200% of the increase or decrease in movement speed is also applied to attack damage. Now the second thing you need to know about her hero traits is this buff called Stalker, which you get from the first hero trait, Hot Pursuit. And this one, what it does is gain a stack of Stalker through movement. Multi-strike damage increases by 15% for each stack of Stalker, and you lose Stalker when multi-strike ends. What happens here is you attack, you run out of multi-strike, you have to build it back up, as you can see in the top left there, and back and forth. So the idea is that you move in between all of your multi-strikes in order to maintain this buff as often as possible. This becomes a lot easier as you move through the hero traits. The second selection being Have Fun, which gives you plus 2% attack speed for every 1 meter of movement made recently during multi-strike, and then plus 6% additional attack speed during multi-strike for every 1 stack of Stalker you have. So again, very important to keep your Stalker at max stacks. Level 50 talent, you don't really have a choice. Cat Punches gives you plus 1 max Stalker stacks, and each multi-strike deals 10% more damage for each stack of Stalker you have. So you can see how this is coming together. You really need these buffs to do the maximum amount of damage, making your damage quite bursty. But if you maintain the buff at all times, it will be a lot more consistent. Catwalk is going to be the level 62 talent. This makes it so you no longer lose Stalker when multi-strike ends. This means you can be stationary instead of having to move every single time. You can actually stand still and do a lot of damage. This is going to be a big increase because otherwise, as fast as you are going to lose a lot of damage during those periods where you have to move around to regain Stalker buff. And then finally, Cat's Vision means that during Cat's Agility, your max Stalker stacks are plus 1. And when you reach the max multi-strike count, you gain another 3. So you go up to 6 total, which ends up being a ton more damage Now, added to this, you will see these new items. These will be unfamiliar to you. These are new with season. These are called hero relics. They can have different rolls on them. This one here, I've got multi-strike steel, 5% increase in damage, and then +1 additional damage during multi-strike for every 1 stack of Stalker. So this would be 6% additional damage when you're at the max stacks. Of course, these are also tiered, so this isn't the best roll you can get. These do drop a lot, so you will have to find many to find those tier 1 rolls, and not only that, but you have to also find 2 tier 1 rolls. They cannot be crafted. They have to be dropped or purchased. And then for the memories, you can drop these blue ones that give you some basic stats like life, movement speed, resistance, or legendary options that give you stuff like allocating a hero trait you haven't selected. For Erika, you can actually get a hero memory that allocates cat dive, essentially giving you another hero trait. How we end up building this in the end game remains to be seen. We haven't really had enough time to test it. Earlier on in the video, I mentioned some kind of best in slot things, if you can get all the dexterity stacking ones or the % dexterity, but there's also a lot of these relics. We just don't know what exists yet. So for now, you will just want to look for movement speed, maybe more attack damage during multi-strike will be good to go, and we'll have to come back and update this later.